me my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth, to live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge. On the growing edge.
And now, here's Allie.
Good morning, and welcome to Growing Edge Live. I'm Allie Benjamin, and I'm so happy to be here today. I'm so glad that you're tuning in, whether you're live here with us at New Thought Media Network, on Facebook or YouTube, or maybe you're watching the replay. Whatever that is, I'm so glad that you're here today. So, oh my gosh, we have an exciting show today. We have a very, very wonderful, lovely special guest, and we'll get to that in a moment. So Growing Edge Live really is conversations with soul-centered people, beings that have channeled their energy, their resources into something beautiful, something amazing, something that's helping individuals to remember who they truly are, wake up, and to live more rich, fulfilling lives. And so we have a whole plethora of guests, and you're going to meet them over the course of the weeks. And before we get going with that segment, we have a segment called Ask Allie. And so I've put it out there, and I put it out there to you today. If you have a question that you'd like to try and stump me with, or you'd like to explore, go ahead and send it to me. You can put that in the comments, and I'm seeing some people show up. There's Michael and Wayne. Hello. You can post it into the comments live, or you can send a direct message to me, Allison Benjamin, and then I will bring it up. So this week, I have a question from Ben. And Ben says, we get to have or be whatever we want. What are some great strategies to know what you want? This is such an awesome question. I found over the years of working with people one-on-one in my practitioner practice and coaching that people struggle really identifying what it is they really want. People know they want something, but they don't know how to articulate it. It takes time to come to that realization, to really dig in to find what it is that you most want. And sometimes, to begin with, on the spiritual path, there's all kinds of wants and needs and desires, or at least this was my experience. And then over time, with practice, doing a lot of meditation and visioning and mindfulness and spiritual study, I began to find that there were less things that I actually wanted. And it was more about how I wanted to feel. And so that might be a good place to start when you're looking at the banquet table that life is, this wonderful banquet table that's filled with so many opportunities, so many choices, so many options, so many dreams, so many wonderful things to do and adventures to have. How do you pick and choose? Well, it doesn't really matter, because life's going to always present you, me, us, with what it is that will be most delightful or most challenging, or the next evolutionary step, whatever that is. So the key to really understanding the law of attraction, or understanding how to align with the things that you really want, is to cultivate the feeling tone. How would it feel to be living the life that you would love to live? How would it feel to be in the kinds of relationships that you want to have? How would it feel to be doing work that was so meaningful, that touched other people's lives and helped elevate them to a greater place of joy and belonging? How would that feel for you? Does it feel peaceful? Does it feel energized? Does it feel curious. So that's what you want to identify. How would it feel if you were living the life that you truly wanted to live? If you had the opportunity to do the things that you wanted to do. And once you identify those feelings, and for me it's peace and love and light and joy, once you understand the kind of the feeling tones and the words associated with those feelings, associated with the things you want to experience, maintaining that feeling, that frequency is the key. And so, how do you do that? How do you maintain a frequency, a vibration that aligns with the experiences and the way you want to be in the world? Well, this is what I do. Every day meditate, every day go out in nature, go for a walk, start to notice, be more mindful about what's going on around me and how I'm feeling and what I'm thinking and how I'm interacting with the world around me. It starts for me just paying closer attention to life, being more in tune with what's unfolding around me that's working, that's beautiful, that has a particular deliciousness to it. And so I make sure that I am always tending to this part of me that that enjoys whatever it is, walking, meditating, having conversations with like-minded people or challenging people sometimes, studying something new. All of this brings me into a place of receptivity. And that's another thing about identifying what you want and then becoming receptive to it, removing any of the obstacles that keep you distanced from what it is that you want to experience. And those things can be maybe judgments or opinions or thinking things need to go a particular way, being rigid. So also in identifying what it is you want and becoming a vibrational match to those things, it's about maintaining a frequency of allowing, of letting life meet you right where you are and trusting that you've identified what it is you want to experience and feel, and you let go, and you become a cooperative part in this beautiful world of the arising of the 10 million trillion things. And then, from my experience, you get to a point where there's not a wanting, there's just an opening to accept all the beauty and the bounty and the gifts that life is on a moment to moment basis. So Ben, I don't know if that answered your question or not, but it felt good just talking about it. So thanks for sharing that. Okay, so now we're moving into my next segment, which is a conversation with an amazing, beautiful soul that I was pondering when we first met. David Ault and I first met. It was almost 30 years ago. I can't believe it's been that long. And at that time, I was living in Big Bear Lake in California, and I was attending the Bear Valley Center for Spiritual Enrichment. And I was maybe 3 or 4 years into my studying science of mind and religious science. And David came as a guest to our center, and he just blew us all away with his music at that time. He was our special guest music, and he came and opened us up with his amazing voice and his beautiful, soulful, folky songs at the time that just had us all fall in love with him. And him being so close, I think living in LA area, he would come up quite regularly. And so I don't know that we really connected as friends at that time, because he was sort of this mystical, magical singer that my husband Michael and I just absolutely fell in love with. And so David probably won't mention all of this, so I'm going to read it. And I got this from your website, David. For over 30 years, David has been a prophetic voice in the human potential movement as an unwavering crusader for mindfulness, global literacy, and social justice, whether through teaching, evolutionary coaching, and keynote presentations. David's singular intention has always been in bridging our collective forgetfulness into our collective reawakening. As an award-winning author, leadership coach, and global education advocate, he loves leading through example and abides by the motto that people would rather see a lesson than hear one. So, David, welcome to Growing Edge Live. We get to see you and hear you, which is such a delight. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Yeah, you have really been such a bright light in the New Thought movement and way beyond. And as I was preparing for the question in the Ask Ali segment, I was thinking, good grief, David has been a master co-creator of so many incredible things. When I sort of reminisce back on some of the stories I've heard you say, your history, the journey you've been on from acting to working with Louise Hay to singing to becoming a minister to becoming integral in this amazing New Thought movement, CSL, affiliated New Thought Network. I've seen you at the Big Sky Retreat. I mean, you're just a part of all of these spokes on the wheel that, you know, maybe New Thought is. And we've got so many things that I could bring up, like our Camino. We both walked the Camino last year. And so there's just so many ways that you've touched my life. And I know you've touched so many people's lives with all of the different things you've done. And you've been able to, obviously, I'm making an assumption here, but you've been able to manifest your dreams to bring to life the vision that resides in your heart and in your mind time and time again. That's a gift, and not everyone has the wherewithal, the good fortune, the luck, or whatever you want to call it, to be able to realize their dreams so out loud like you have. And so I just want to acknowledge you for all that you've done, and the I don't know how many hundreds, thousands, millions of lives that you've touched. And I know that you're a humble man. And I know that these words are probably, you know, expanding our conversation too far and wide. But I just want to, you know, expand it that far and wide. You are truly a light on this planet, and the work you do. Thank you for that.
Wow, thank you.
So can you tell us a little bit about your spiritual path? You know, how did that evolve? How did this grown-up David get to be this guy that's done all this stuff? Where did it all start?
I would umbrella that and just say that it's from exquisite mistakes. A life of exquisite mistakes, which in hindsight I would call exquisite exploring. And so one explores and one pioneers and one does what one does based upon wherever they're standing in life and with their present day awareness. And so we all stand in these particular spots along the way and operate out of the need that we have in that moment. And so there was a very juvenile need within me for certain things at a young age. And then that need, it seems weird to classify it that way or describe it that way, but the need matures until the need itself isn't so much a need anymore as it is just an observation. And so I think I've gotten here by falling in love with paradox. I've gotten here, and I've gotten to a pretty sweet place of peace because of paradox. And that means to cease fighting the appearances, and to cease holding on to identities and stories and things, and just learning what it truly does mean to be the observer, and to take action, and to do so each time incrementally, not holding on so tightly to what I think it's supposed to look like. But what I tell students and people I work with, and speaking and whatnot, is go hold tightly. Go max that need out, do what you need to do, because we can't airlift people from where they are in their spot. And so my only advice is, if you're in an atmosphere that is punitive and punishing, find the exit. If you're with a teacher who is saying that this is the only way, try to graciously find the exit. and do you, and explore you, because your refinement will happen in the time that it needs to happen.
Beautiful. So I find it interesting that I ask you about you and where it all started, and we didn't quite get there.
No. Well, I mean,
So,
okay. I always think people know it, but it was Louise,
Yeah.
Louise Hay. And I grew up fundamentalist Christian, just as punitive as it comes in terms of atmosphere and environment, and escaped that to the degree that I could with the resources that I had as a young boy, and embarked upon a acting career in New York City, and swearing off God. So I had grown up with it. I had gone to university and been on Oral Roberts University and all of that. And by the time I got that diploma, I just drove off that campus and said, okay, I'm done with God, and went off to explore the passion that I had for acting and music and whatnot. And so I was in New York City, and I was doing the things that I knew to do at the time, still fumbling and green and all of that kind of stuff. But it wasn't until I wound up in Los Angeles for a series of auditions with NBC, and I didn't know a soul. And I was biding my time between appointments and walking on Melrose Avenue. And I ran into somebody that I had gone to school with in Oral Roberts University. And I had my repulsion shield, my resistance, like, oh my God, they're going to convert me and tell me, and it wasn't that at all. He ended up inviting me to a Wednesday night thing, and that was Louise. And so my first real reset, I'll call it a reset, was that Wednesday night with Louise. And the message was incredibly simplistic, but it was perfect. It was perfect for what I needed, because it was different than any other thing I had ever heard before. And it was simply that you're enough. So you got to remember where people are, where they stand, and something as simplistic as you are enough could be groundbreaking for an individual who has lived under a suppressive message of some sort, whether it's through religion or just their environment. And so to hear that you're enough, and your enoughness is not earned, it just is, was revolutionary. And so I took to it like a fish out of water, and that was the very beginnings of a very simple, simplistic, but just complete turnaround of my understanding and my healing with identifying with this thing called God. So, and Louise became my second mom, and ended up touring with her and observing how someone is in that kind of notoriety, And strangely, I've had that experience a number of times. I had it with that man whose name is on that university. uh, Being on, international television and seeing how people are backstage, seeing how people are when the audience is not in front of them. And that's always been very uh, much an influential observation for me. I want to see who people are when they're not all bright and shiny. And I want to see who they are in their realness and in their rawness, and making a sort of personal covenant, and realizing that it's important to observe all of those things that I both admire and I am feeling resistance towards, and using that, amalgamating that to determine how do I want to be. So they've all been teachers. They've all been beautiful teachers for me.
Well, what would you say was Louise the same in front of the camera on stage as she was behind? Was that something you observed, or what did you
Yeah, in my
you
era, absolutely. And I say in my era because what we were doing simultaneously is we were navigating through a pandemic. It's just that that pandemic was very siloed with a particular group of people. And the marginalization and the judgment and the slander and the pain that came from being in as a gay person, and the vindication that would come and the condemnation that would come was overwhelming. It was overwhelming for her. I mean, it's one thing to be sort of keep your homophobia or your racism under wraps, but when it's so blatant and when it becomes mob mentality, then you have these people who are navigating a horrific disease in the prime of their life, having no place to turn. And so I watched her, and I watched her compassion, and I watched her heartbreak over and over and over again. So I mean, Allie, she taught me how to be with the ill. She taught me how to be with the ill. She taught a group of us, and she said, okay, never make the ill person work. And I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but when you go see people in the hospital, or people, they just don't know how to be around somebody who's in illness. It's almost as if the patient has to take over and make everybody okay. And her first, advice out of the starting gate was, don't make them do that. Don't make them talk. Don't make them do anything. If anything, rub their feet. And so we would get our list of people who were critically ill, and we would just rub their feet and take care of their dog, wash their dishes, do all of the basic things. And we would get these lists. I get like a list of 10 men, and in 2 weeks, those 10 men would be dead. And so I would get a new list. And when you're in it, the paralysis of the unusualness of that gets put in the parking lot until there's an exhale, a time when things might settle a little bit. And I think all of us, Louise included, were paddling as fast as we could to just maintain a safe environment. And so Louisa's thing every session was, I'm not a healer. I am providing a space where healing can occur. And she would say that every single whether it was in Los Angeles or us on the road, she was inviting people to collaborate in a healing environment through mindset, through energy, through love, through touch, through caring for one another, through making it a safe space for people to land who were being cast out of their families and losing everything and fearing this premature death. And it was an extraordinarily bizarre time. To have death become so customary, with regularity. And I think many of us, post all of that, look back and have all kinds of feelings around that, Louise included. And part of her her reset, like just the fatigue of being human and all of that, was to leave Los Angeles. And she began focusing more in her growth and collaboration with what Hay House would become. But those of us who reflect back on that time, it's like we don't even have to say anything. We just look at each other in the eyes and it's all there. It's all still there. At Louise's little celebration, there was just a couple of hundred people there in San Diego. And that conclave of men, we all kind of sat next to each other and just reminisced about the thousands of people who left and the talent. And you can't really understand or put words to this plane of existence, this human life. All that we can do when we walk away from something like that is to determine, how do we want to be? How do we want to continue to give? What kind of level of bodhisattva do we want to come from with regards to our service? Because you don't get to take any of it with you.
No. Wow. What an opportunity and an experience that you had, and I can just imagine those men sitting around reflecting on a life, on a time where you all came together to really support so many. And I guess Louise's legacy and the legacy that all of you created with her continues through, all of you, I guess, out in the world doing your own things or your own ministries. All right, so we are at the bottom of the hour here at New Thought Media Network, and we'll see you after this short break.
New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge. On the growing edge.
And now, Here's Ali.
We're back. So, I'd love to know how your life currently has become a reflection of your soul's purpose, your dreams, goals, and desires. Because as I said in introducing you, our life has, we've known each other for some time, and I've seen you do a lot of different things. And so, what is it now, after all of these trials, all of these successes, all of these struggles, all of these recreating Davids, all of these chapters? What is the chapter you're in at the moment? And I'd love to hear about that, for you to share a little bit about what you're doing, and maybe some of the things that you've learned with this next most recent iteration, some of the things you've learned that are most important for today's spiritual student seeker.
Kind of what I said in the beginning about paradox. Where I am is continuing to learn and fall in love with paradox. There is a poem, prose, whatever you want to call it, that is misattributed to Mother Teresa. It's called Anyway, but it was actually written by this young man as a college thesis or something. And it's a list of paradoxical statements. And the one that really fuels me and defines my behavior and my focus and my theme of life is: you can spend an entire life building something and it will be destroyed overnight. Build it anyway. To me, that kind of encapsulates where I have arrived at in the moment. So I would say I used to be a person who wanted to leave the world a better place. I wanted to create a legacy and all that kind of stuff. And none of that's wrong. But for me, it was too muddied in ego and look at me, or what am I doing? And I have beautifully fallen on my face so many times, and am delightedly humbled in realizing I'm not really interested in leaving a legacy. What I'm interested in is being used, being some vessel. And that allows me to trust financially, to trust health-wise, to trust the ways and the means, but to get my bloodied knuckled grip off of the how. And so a great inordinate amount of my time is focused on a foundation that I began years ago. And it's called Kaleidoscope Child Foundation. And what we do is provide education to some of the world's most vulnerable territories, to children disenfranchised, overlooked, stigmatized, perhaps even, particularly with young girls who are born into cultures that don't really value education for girls. And it has all unfolded with all kinds of hiccups and glories and all of the beautiful mistakes in between. And today we serve annually just right over 1,000 children. And so we're in Cambodia, which is our signature location where it all began. We have 2 campuses there. So in that campus, we really work at how do you uncover the dignity of a child. So if you get to know them, if you spend any time there, or really work at understanding village life and family dynamic, you'll see that so many of them come from nothing, or they don't even know who the mother is or the father is, or somebody within their lineage is raising them. But it's a very hard existence. And so to pay attention to them, to learn their name, to provide some type of consistency is some of the first gifts of normalcy that they will receive. And so it's not even just about the education. You can't throw a book at a child. Now you got to understand transportation and eyesight and dentistry and tapeworms. I mean, the gamut, the list just keeps going on and on and on. It's like, it's like, hey, if you open that door, you got to walk through it fully. So there's a phrase in the nonprofit world is that you can't care about some of it. You got to care about all of it. And so if you're going to do this, you have to really be mindful. We have 2 schools in India, and they're in the poorest state of that entire massive country. And they're in territories of that state that are some of the most stigmatized. And so I remember sitting in a cow barn on the floor because the year before, when I had finally found the person that I thought would be a great administrator, I went back to see how the pilot program was doing. And I had rented a cow barn complete with, cow dung mud pies on the walls and the flies and all of that kind of stuff. And I was just so overcome with joy at how resilient and how swift their minds were. These are illiterate children who had never been exposed to formal education. And in that year's time, they were writing and they were reading Hindi. Some of them were doing fractions. I mean, it was scary, amazing. It's like the sponge was just sitting there waiting for the water, right? And I'm sitting on the cow barn floor, a little prideful, going, "Oh, look what we did. Isn't it amazing?" And then all of a sudden I had this horrible thought. I thought, oh my God, what have you done? You have exposed these young girls to education. You've given them the opportunity to learn. And in doing that, you have not thought this through, because culturally, they will never leave that slum or that village. Because culturally, in rural territories, it's not like you're in Delhi or Mumbai or a large city. There's no place for them to use this education. And so in some ways, it's kind of cruel that you would offer this and then not see it through. And so all of a sudden that was like, okay, now we've got to come up with longstanding curriculum and tracks of study and emphasis. And is that going to be science? Is it going to be technology? And so we've had to develop corresponding curriculum in order to reinforce that. And from that commitment, we've got a piece of land that someday, we will build on, and we envision it being a work center for these young women to be able to use the education that they're getting now, but still live close to home so that they can do a contract job of some sort with let's say an Indian corporation, make their own money, establish their own autonomy, and still be culturally sensitive and appropriate to what happens there. And those are just the types of things that are constantly, day in and day out, needing to be addressed with the work that we do. And so we're in Guatemala. We gave a grant to a CSL sponsored school in Kenya. And we're about to even launch a teach the teacher training for local United States-based teachers to try to offer them support in the current climate of being a teacher in this volatile environment. So it's a lot.
Wow.
It's a lot.
And how have you reconciled that when you said that oh shit moment where it's like, oh, have you sort of reconciled that within yourself, that you have such a desire, strong desire to do these good works, and then, you know, getting to ground zero, so to speak, and being there, boots on the ground in the thick of these villages, communities, school, um, and, you know, a Westerner
Mm-hmm.
here now. Here I am in the thick of this. I've started something. Where are you right now with that?
It's always understanding that we're working with them, not for them.
Nice.
And anytime I catch myself or any of the rest of us involved with Kaleidoscope Child Foundation trying to think that we're working for them, we take a step back and we go, nope, that's not appropriate. How do we work with them? And so we really do explore forums of communication and ways in which we can help them be a part of the co-creative process with that. So I might think that this particular approach is better, but that's coming through my Western mindset. So it's like, show me how you want this to be done. And that has, this is going to sound a little silly, but on paper, it looks like we are doing something for these people, but on a completely different plane of existence, they're helping us. They're the teachers. They're the ones who are actually humbling us, because in our world of new thought, we always talk about beginner's mind and open from the top. I don't think we really understand what that means. I mean, we understand it from a well-ventilated, air-conditioned penthouse kind of version of that. But to be open from the top is really the excavation of bias and fears. And, we all talk about trauma these days. And it's all of those things that color the way in which we lead and the way in which we choose and the way in which we speak. And when you are saturated in a completely different environment, a slum, or people who have relatively nothing, and yet there's joy there, and it is joy that does not come from consumerism. It's innate. And so it's like, I need to pay attention. I need to let them teach me. And so my greatest teachers have been these children, these grandmothers, these village mothers who seemingly have nothing, but who show me what it means to live fully.
Wow. So many things come up for me as you're talking about girls. When you were saying giving girls an opportunity to learn to read and write and whatnot. And then you bring in the grandmother and how these older women, the elders, have taught you and your team a lot of humility and a lot of, maybe what's already there that, the Westerner doesn't kind of see at first glance, but experiences once they're there. So I don't really know how to form this question, but it's something to do with teaching the young girls and now seeing the grandmother. Like, how do you think you're able to benefit or impart some kind of practical something or spiritual something or to these young girls that will later down the road when they're grandmothers? How do you see it evolving over the years as your quote unquote interference with them at a young impressionable age?
That's a really great question, because is it interference or is it a natural progression? And so there is a delicate balance. Because I don't know of many models, and I speak from experience and observation, I don't know of many models whose intent when they go to territories like this is to collaborate. There's a lot of savior complex, and admittedly there was a lot of that in the beginning of my work that I didn't even know was there. And I think I was doing some of this. I mean, it started with a pure intent, and then I think there were times when I was doing it more to feel better about myself, to reconcile my own struggles of worth, and then being humbled by that, and then leaning into and being available to the wisdom. So it's like, how do I it so the grandmother. So I've had beautiful times with many grandmothers. And it isn't that they don't want necessarily their granddaughters or these young girls to learn. It's that they don't want them to lose also the culture and the lineage of rites and things that are sacred. They don't want that to become diluted through education per se. And so, like anything, that leans itself into creating a hybrid, a beautiful hybrid that helps elevate. Everybody wins. So it's not an either or.
Yeah.
And it's already been, the woman that I work with in Guatemala, her and her husband, she was the first one in her village, in the Mayan village, to sort of defy the system and get an education in spite of, and to work with her and to watch her and to have her correct me many times when we're in these villages. And by correct, like, she was the one that said, David, we're not working for them, we're working with them. Because I was about to just give this 5-gallon water filter to this woman who just walked up to me. I was just going to give it to her. And she said, no, you don't give that to her. She knew the rules of getting the filter and she chose not to abide by them. So she's not getting I'm like, oh, got it. And so it's like sometimes we think we're doing good when we're not. And so just being open and being the student and just observing. I was like me, hundreds, it felt like thousands of times watching Louise, standing in the sidelines, watching her, standing behind her, watching people deify her, and watching her having to process in that moment, how do I deify this? And so it's just baked into the human experience. So sometimes we want to help, but we become seduced by the act of helping. And when you do that, when I do that, I lock that person then into an identity of always being needing help. And that creates a separation. And so I have to chip away at that. So it's not about helping people. It's about mutually coming to an understanding of raising the quality of life, bringing sanitation and hygiene and fresh water. And how do we do that mindfully? And my board and I, during COVID, when everybody else was struggling as well, we just thought, let's not focus on how we can grow. Let's just focus on how we can tend to what we have and do it well. Mm-hmm. And sure, we're going to have goals of, we want to raise this much money, because like everybody, the human part is, we've got a budget and we got to meet that budget, and we've got responsibilities, and we've got teacher salaries and rent, and but it's like, how do you do those things without trying to be bigger? Just do what you have and do it well.
Yeah.
Do it fully.
Do you have a chance to bring any sort of your spiritual practices into these scenarios, or is this you do?
And not in an obtrusive way, not in a missionaryistic way. I just made up a word. But so meditation is culturally, common in Cambodia. So I'll gather all the children in the courtyard and we will sit and we'll meditate. And it's fantastic. It's just fantastic. And we do the same thing in India. We don't do that in Guatemala. That's a Catholic oriented country, but we just love them. I mean, there's what better spiritual practice is than that is to just love them and champion them and learn their names and make them feel seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do they react to you? How do the ones that you've spent more time with, like who are you to them?
Oh, they've got all their terms of endearment, their cultural terms of endearment, but what's really satisfying, like in Cambodia, we've got a couple of teachers now who started out as the kids,
Oh my gosh.
in the crowd, and they went through as much as we could provide for them, and then they got whatever supplemental they needed, and they've come back to teach, and there's nothing more gratifying than that.
Yeah,
And
unbelievable.
yeah, so my childhood wasn't the best, and that's a whole nother episode. But I always wanted kids. I always wanted to have a child because, like any of us, I think we want to give that child perhaps what we didn't have, or we want to reconcile some dysfunctional lineage in some way. And so I ended up with far more kids than I ever dreamed of. And so I get to practice a lot. I get to practice and give what I didn't get. And I get to learn to listen and not and to just meet them where they are. That's
Yeah.
it.
So typically at the end of our show, I ask my guests to do a spiritual practice, and we've got only a couple of minutes. And
Hmm.
so I'm wondering, rather than a spiritual practice, could you maybe get into the mindset of being this wise, I don't know. What I want is, I'd love it if you would say, to that little boy David that didn't get what he needed, and to these young boys and girls that are coming and you're spending a little time in meditation, or that where you get to be more one-on-one and go a little deeper. What do you say to them? What do you say to those children, in a roundabout way, like sort of a nutshell of what you want them to know about themselves?
It has to start with inquiry and asking questions and finding what it is that they love, and then tailoring the conversation and the focus about encouragement, encouraging them to trust their path of the things that they love. And so it's very nuanced, because culturally we think, we talk all the time about go for your dreams, and that doesn't register the same way in a developing country. It's not, it doesn't, there's not a mental prototype for that. And so you find encouragements either through example, or through words, or through deliberate conversation. Tell me more. Tell me more about why you love papaya. Tell me more about why you love your your little book so that you can begin to bring that to life and let them know that their feeling about that thing is valid.
Mm.
And that feeling is, like you were saying in the beginning of your show, that feeling is worth exploring.
Right.
It's not a waste of time. And so I would call them encouragements, like deliberate encouragements to remind them, because we are products of our environment. We all are. We are sponges, and sometimes in our development we are more absorbent. I still remember encouragements that random people from 1,000 years ago told me.
Yeah.
They're there. So that's what I would say as a spiritual practice. And you don't have to be in a developing country to do that. You can give encouragements to anybody.
True.
The person who chucks your groceries out, it's a beautiful way to walk this world.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, David, thank you so much for sharing um, a snapshot into what's going on in your life and with Kaleidoscope Child. And I know that those of us that are listening and those of you that will listen to this, that you will take some of what David has said and really think about it in regards to your own life and the children that you have the blessing to encounter. Because what I heard there that struck my heartstrings was every child hungers to be seen and heard and to know that they matter, and brings tears to me. And I know that you're showing up where you do helps those not just the children but the adults that are supporting them feel like they matter and they can make a difference, and that's what you're helping to make happen. So thank you so much. You truly are a blessing. And thank you everyone for listening, for watching, and for New Thought Media Network. Thank you for being here today. And next week we're going to have Linda Frazee, a wonderful Enneagram coach and teacher, and my therapist. So, watch out. Thanks again for being here, and thanks to New Thought Media Network. Mwah. Peace and blessings.